While running through the battlefield between the raining bullets, he catches a glimpse of the enemy and thinks that they actually have a hope of victory. But then a bullet flies straight through him. He looks down to see a massive hole in his chest. He falls to the ground, starting to bleed out. It was a fatal blow. He was about to die without having been able to do anything. He glances at the enemy, an unknown threat that just appeared one day and destroyed an entire continent. Known as the Liquidator, humans banded together to fight against it. A man who had survived a giant meteor without a scratch, the Shield Brian Miller. The Great Sage said to have powers equal to an entire division, Great Sage Bella Albright. An archer who took down high-level dragons with a single arrow, the archer Jacob Bloomfield. And the strongest swordsman to ever exist, the sword Saint Amy White. And then there was their unit. Those from the so-called support unit. But in reality, they were just sacrificial pawns. His name was Gray Lee, a common foot soldier. They were all on a different level compared to him. He knew that the graduates from the World Union Academy were amazing, but he didn't expect there to be this much of a difference. They all attacked the Liquidator together. He wonders if it truly mattered if the support units were there for the fight. Amy jumps into the air to land the final blow on the Liquidator. Tears start going down his cheek as he asks why they had to go through such harsh training if they were going to die before the fight even began. After the attacks from the humans, they managed to break a small piece of the Liquidator's armor. The Liquidator says that it was impressive for the primitive beings to even scratch him. He says that he should stop playing around now. He winds up an attack, and with one slice, all the continent's best fighters get cut in half. They didn't have a chance against the being from the beginning. Gray wonders what it means by playing around and how the Liquidator managed to take them all out in one blow. He closes his eyes and says that there was no way they could win this fight from the beginning. But then he realizes something. It had been a very long time since his heart had been pierced, but he was still somehow alive. A faint voice says that it found him. It asks him to come forth, addressing him as the one who wields great power. The world around him changes. He finds himself in a weird place with monoliths all around him. He wonders if it was the afterlife. He asks who the person sitting in front of him was. The being observes him for a while before answering. It says that Gray hasn't perished yet, and that his physical wounds were already healed. Gray looks at his body, which was actually healed. He asks if the strange being was the one who healed him. It says that it had no hand in it, that it was Gray's own powers that healed him. Gray asks what that means. The being says that it can't explain as it was unable to properly analyze his powers. But it guarantees that Gray's powers were stronger than what the Liquidator possesses. That was, if he could control it properly. Gray asks if the being was saying that they could win against the Liquidator. It says that it doesn't know for certain and that it wouldn't get its hopes up. But it also believes that they ought to get rid of the Liquidator. The next second, it appears in front of him, its hand going through his heart. It says that now he could go back. Gray starts glowing, and the being says that it had given Gray some of its powers. Gray's physical body starts moving, and he grabs his sword. A dark aura starts covering Gray's sword. He asks if it was the being's powers, but the being says that it was Gray's powers, that its powers weren't visible to the naked eye. Gray says that he understands, and the Liquidator hears him. When it turns around, Gray was already in front of it, and he swings at the Liquidator. The Liquidator wonders how it missed Gray. It was sure that it gave fatal blows to all humans that it was facing. Gray says that his attack did manage to do some damage. He says that he could go as far as saying that his powers were stronger than the Liquidator's. The Liquidator tells Gray to not underestimate it. It flies past Gray and cuts him in half. It commends Gray for making it use so much strength while walking away, but it feels a much stronger killing intent behind it. It quickly turns around to see that Gray was now fully covered in the same dark aura that was covering his sword, and his sword starts glowing in size as he lifts it up to swing at the Liquidator. The Liquidator asks what kind of abomination it was facing while putting a shield up. It asks if Gray was truly human. Gray strikes, and the Liquidator's shield starts giving out. The shield breaks, and the Liquidator takes substantial damage. Gray says that he was the one who should be asking if the Liquidator was truly human. He says that he is surprised that the Liquidator had survived, and that the Liquidator's strength wasn't something to sneeze at. The Liquidator was now gasping. Gray appears in front of him once again, and says that he just has to crush the Liquidator over and over until he was dead. He strikes the Liquidator once again. The Liquidator calls Gray a monster. The Liquidator then brings his hands together, and his whole body starts glowing. A small magical circle appears between his hands. The sun itself disappears, and the moon comes out. Gray asks why it suddenly became night. But then again, he didn't care. He attacks the liquidator once again, but this time the attack gets blocked. Gray was surprised to see his attack being stopped. The liquidator starts laughing while saying that Gray's attacks were futile. He says that within his plane of true dusk, nothing was capable of harming him. He tells Gray to stop his pointless resistance and look at the stars. Gray looks up to see a star that was growing in size, or perhaps coming closer to him fast. It lands directly on Gray. The liquidator laughs in front of the beam of light. Once the attack ends, there was only a huge crater left where Gray was once standing. He says that Gray won't be able to revive himself if he was completely pulverized to dust. Just then, in front of him, a magic circle starts forming. The liquidator asks what was happening. Just then, the being from Yahello says that Gray had gathered a great amount of power, enough to take him back. The liquidator asks if the being was Kronos, the Titan of Time. Kronos ignores the liquidator and asks if Gray can hear him, and offers to send Gray back in time to the past. The liquidator starts cursing at Kronos. Kronos says that this was all he could do for Gray while sending him back, and that he entrusts the fate of the world to Gray's hands. A while later, Gray wakes up in a field, a familiar and peaceful place. He looks around and notices that it was his hometown, the village called Renadu. But it shouldn't exist, as it was destroyed 15 years ago. He remembers what Kronos had told him and asks if it really happened. He feels a jolt of pain on his arm. He remembers that it was about this time when he was picked on by a guy named Belder and his underlings. He wonders how weak he was back in the day. He used to think that those guys were too strong for him to beat. But then, he was the only one who was able to damage the liquidator. While going back to town, he says that he will think about how to deal with the liquidator once he was a bit stronger. While walking back, he ran into them, Belder and his underlings. Belder says that he was looking for Gray and that Gray made him go through a lot of trouble. They drop a sword in front of Gray and ask him to pick it up. Gray asks what this was supposed to mean. Belder asks Gray not to act so dumb and says that they were having a mock battle. Gray apologizes and says that he can't have a mock battle as the injury in his hand wasn't yet fully healed. He thanks them for inviting him and politely refuses. Belder says that Gray didn't have to worry about injuries as the blades were blunt and safe. Gray says that even if the blade was blunt, it was still a big lump of iron. If hit with it in the wrong place, it would still be very dangerous. Belder slams his sword on the ground and shouts at Gray to shut his mouth. He asks if Gray thought he would take no for an answer. He says that if Gray didn't like swords that much, he could fight without a weapon instead. Gray wonders if Belder was crazy, wanting to beat up an unarmed guy in the name of a mock battle. When he was in the military, a doctor had told him that the reason his swordsmanship wasn't improving was because of all the injuries he had sustained as a child. He thinks back and says that maybe this was the point of his life where his life as a loser began. Gray dodges Belder's swing and realizes that Belder's strike he dodged just now was slow. He manages to dodge another swing, and another one after that. After dodging a few more swings, he realizes that it was him who had gotten faster. Belder curses at Gray, asking why he couldn't hit him. Gray starts dodging the following strikes and swings with ease. Even Belder's underlings think that Gray was moving like a completely different person. While picking up the sword, he thinks that even though he didn't have the body he used to have when he was in the military, he still had the memories of all the battles he had fought in. Belder jumps at Gray after seeing him stationary, but Gray parries the strike. He notes that a simple parry was enough to throw Belder off his feet and wonders if it was actually okay for him to fight such an amateur. But then again, Belder wasn't someone who deserved pity. He was a piece of trash who tormented Gray because he couldn't fight. But that wasn't the case anymore. He hits Belder's sword, disarming him. Gray thinks that Belder truly was worse than an amateur to let go of his sword so easily. He says that Belder probably wasn't trained on how to receive a blow from a sword. But there was no need to worry, as they just told Gray that as long as the blade was dull, it was totally safe to beat someone with. Gray slashes at Belder and leaves a cut. Belder immediately starts screaming in pain and falls to the ground. Gray wonders if the blade wasn't supposed to be blunt. He checks the blade, and it was indeed blunt. If it was sharp, Belder would have actually been killed. He turns around and slams Belder's nose in with the sword, knocking a tooth out in the process. He asks why Belder was screaming so much. He asks if Belder wasn't the one who said that the blunt swords were safe. He asks if Belder was changing his mind now. Belder tries to stop his nose from bleeding and calls on his underlings to go beat up Gray. They were scared to fight him after seeing him being this strong all of a sudden. But then, they plan on taking him on altogether. They run around to attack from all sides at once. Belder also gets back on his feet and grabs his sword. Gray asks if they were ready for round 2. Belder orders his underlings to attack, and they all dash at Gray altogether. Gray says that he was going to overlook the others if they had left him alone, but now that they have decided to join the fight, he beats them all up and wonders if these were really the guys he was so scared of before. He asks if they weren't from the Saria swordsmanship dojo. Belder says that it was kinda true. Another one says that they hadn't been going to the dojo after they felt like they had gotten strong. Looking at the way they talk, Gray thinks that the dojo wasn't even worth his time, but decides to go there anyways. He tells them to introduce him at the dojo. Belder asks if Gray can't ask anyone else to do it. He says that if he told his master that he lost, he can't imagine what they would do to him. Gray slashes his sword again, cutting a leaf in front of Belder's face while asking if they wanted to continue the disciplining session instead. Belder runs off, saying that he will introduce him to the master of the dojo. His underlings tell him to slow down while they followed him. While going to the dojo, Belder asks why Gray wanted to go to the dojo in the first place. Gray says that it was because this dojo had a recommendation slot for the academy. Belder says that he also heard something like that before. One of the underlings says that Gray is already strong enough without going to the academy. Gray asks if it wouldn't be nice if he was actually strong enough, when even the world's strongest lineup was no match for the Liquidator. Even when using that power he had gotten, he wasn't able to even scratch the Liquidator when it got serious. He didn't even get to see the Liquidator's full strength. Belder points at the dojo and says that they have arrived. During his fight with the Liquidator, there was a moment where he was able to control that dark power. He focused on the swordsmanship that was taught to him by the Sword Saint during that moment. He thinks that maybe if he spent more time training in swordsmanship in the same conditions as the Sword Saint, maybe he could change the outcome of the battle. He thinks that might be the reason why Kronos sent him back in time. The master of the dojo listens to the whole story from Belder and realizes that Belder and his underlings had used the swordsmanship they learned from them to pick on innocent civilians, and ended up getting their asses handed to them instead. She clicks her tongue in disappointment. She was the swordsmanship instructor named Saria. Belder says that they weren't trying to pick on Gray, that it was just a mock battle. She whacks him with the side of the sword, and he goes flying, crashing into the back wall. She asks if she told him to give her excuses. She says that if they considered beating up someone unarmed a mock battle, then her beating them up should also be considered a mock battle. She points her sword at Belder and tells him to leave and never return to her dojo. She says that all of them can no longer call themselves students of the dojo from then on. They all leave, and Saria turns around and goes on her knees and apologizes to Gray for what her former students had done. Gray says that there was no need for her to worry about it. She says that she heard that he was there for a recommendation to the academy. Gray says that was correct. She says that as an apology for the trouble Belder and his underlings had caused, as much as she would have liked to write a letter of recommendation, she has to confirm his abilities first. She hands him a wooden sword and Gray agrees to duel her. Saria says that Gray can have the first move and asks him to attack whenever. Gray bursts forward and attacks relentlessly. While blocking his attacks, she notices that Gray's swordsmanship was quite practical for his age, as if he has been through countless battles before. By the way he moves, she thinks that Belder and his lackeys were no match for Gray, although his swordplay seems largely self-taught. It seemed to have a little essence of the swordplay that was taught at the academy. She wonders if someone had taught him before. Although he had the talent, he was but a diamond in the rough. She says that although she was having fun, it was about time to wrap it up. Both Saria and Gray dash at each other and clash. During the clash, she finds it strange that he wasn't faltering no matter how much she pushed him. He was keeping up with her. Although she just wanted to test his skills a little, she was now having to give it her all. She wonders why she was suddenly so afraid of a child. Gray swings using his dark aura, forcing Saria to jump back. She thought that she had a bad feeling about the swing, but it turned out to be just a wild swing. Gray falters and Saria seizes the opportunity and says that he finally revealed his weakness. She jumps forward with a swing and says that it was over, but the swing didn't land, because her sword was cut in half. She realizes what had happened as her broken sword drops to the floor behind her. Gray thinks that this was the same sensation he felt when fighting the Liquidator. He still had those powers he used back then. Just then, the backlash hits him, and he falls to his knees. Saria, confused, asks if Gray is alright. His body had failed to keep up with his powers. He wobbles back to his feet, insisting he was fine. He decides not to use this power carelessly anymore. For a moment, he wonders if he should tell Saria about it, but seeing her confused expression, he decides against it. He figures she wouldn't believe him anyway, and besides, it was something he couldn't even control. He brushes it off, saying he just got carried away. Saria looks at the clean cut on her sword and thinks it was logically impossible for a dull wooden blade to slice another wooden sword so cleanly. She's certain Gray knows that too. When he tries to change the topic, she lets it go with a sigh. She then asks if he wasn't here for a recommendation to the academy. Gray nods and asks if she could give him one. Saria says she could certainly write him a recommendation to the kingdom's finest educational institute, the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship. But she shakes her head, saying she won't do it. Gray assumes it's because of his lack of strength. But Saria tells him otherwise. She wants him to aim higher. She says he should go to the World Union Academy instead. Not just the kingdom's best, but the world's finest, the same place where the Sword Saint and her allies once studied. Gray is stunned and asks if someone like him could even be accepted there. Saria flatly tells him it's impossible as he is now. She reminds him that his body isn't fit to be a swordsman. At the Royal Academy, he might have been able to fake his way through, but the World Union Academy would see right through him. She asks how he even managed to acquire such skill with such a feeble body. Gray admits he was hoping for the Royal Academy because he knew he couldn't compete with the students of the World Union Academy. Saria narrows her eyes and asks if he was already giving up. She reminds him he still has 9 months until the entrance exam. Gray wonders aloud if that's too little time. Saria admits it's not much, but insists he trust her. Then she asks if he's ready to suffer. Gray grumbles that he doesn't want to suffer, but agrees anyway. He asks her to take care of him for the next 9 months. Saria cracks her knuckles and grins, asking if they should begin his training. Over the following months, Gray is pushed to his absolute limits. She makes him train with heavy weights strapped to his body, forces him to eat an obscene amount of protein, and even makes him drink a strange concoction that looks like it had a live bird inside. Day after day, their training is relentless until swordsmanship is drilled into his bones. By the end of the 8th month, Gray looks completely different. His body far stronger, his movements sharper. Saria tells him he's grown well and that she has nothing left to teach him. She tells him to take the exam with confidence. Gray protests, pointing out that there's still a month left. Saria explains that it's better to arrive early, so he has time to get used to the exam environment. She hands him a pouch of money, enough for travel and food for a month. Gray hesitates, saying he can't take so much from her, and that leaving a month early feels too soon. He accuses her of trying to chase him out of the village. Saria laughs nervously and insists he's overthinking, but Gray catches the look in her eyes. He asks if this has anything to do with the ogre nest he heard the guards talking about. Saria looks away and says that they did find something like that. With a smile, she says that it was nothing to do with them. She says that help was coming from the capital, so they didn't have to worry about it. She says that he should head to the exam without any worries. Gray knew that his master was lying. He knew that there was no help coming, and right before the village was destroyed, his master would also lose her life. He had heard in his last life that she was killed when she went to kill the ogres on her own. Gray agrees to his master's words. He thanks her for everything she did for him and says goodbye. Saria smiles and says that she prays that Gray passes the exam. Later that month, Saria goes to the forest by herself again to deal with the ogres. While looking at the blood on the ground, she says that if the scout reports were accurate, then the ogre nest was right in front of her. Gray asks where she was headed to. Saria looks up to where she heard the voice. Gray asks if she missed him. Saria asks what Gray was doing there and if he shouldn't be already on his way to the academy. Gray jumps down from the tree and says that he should be the one asking that. He says that he thought his master said that the ogre nest would be taken care of by the army from the royal capital. She says that the army couldn't come because of some urgency, and that was why she decided to deal with it herself. She says that she alone was enough for this and that she already knew the strength of the nest from the scout reports. She says that the boss was an elite ogre and the nest held around 40 to 50 monsters in total. She admits that the number of minions would be a tad tricky even for her. Gray knows that an elite ogre would be easy work for his master on its own, but the ogre's real strength lies in its intelligence and leadership, and considering the risk of getting surrounded, it was suicidal to fight alone. And he knew for sure that if he let his master go on alone, she wouldn't make it out alive, and the village would follow the same fate soon after. He had seen the future with his own eyes. Gray asks his master to let him go with her. Saria says that there was no need and that she alone will suffice. Gray says that he doesn't want to miss this chance to gain some real combat experience. He asks if she thinks that he was just going to get in her way. Saria says that he should know that he wouldn't get in her way. She says that he couldn't even best her in a mock battle anymore. But she thinks that there was no saying what would happen in a real fight, especially if it's a monster's nest that suddenly formed like this. For dangerous jobs like this, it was best to wait until he had a little more experience in real fights. Gray says that if she really insists on going alone, he had an idea. Saria asks what he means. Gray steps forward and says that he will fight her and knock her out and deal with the ogres by himself. Saria stands without giving an answer for a while, but then she gives up, but makes him promise that no matter what happens he has to come back alive. Gray drops his sword and says that he planned to do so himself. Gray himself also makes his master promise the same. They walk to the ogre nest. Saria says that the terrain left no room for escape. She says that the ogres must have had a lot of confidence building a nest in such a death trap. Gray says that they couldn't escape either, that they were against intelligent monsters, and that it was better to stay cautious. Saria agrees. She says that she can't see the boss anywhere and thinks that it was probably in a tent somewhere. She hopes that they could thin down their numbers before their boss comes out. She asks Gray to take care of the enemies on one side while she went for the other side. Gray says that he understands, and the two of them dash out. When the first ogre notices them, Saria was already too close. She cuts its head off, and it drops in front of another ogre. The ogre screams for help, and a group of ogres dash towards Saria. Gray attacks them from behind and starts killing them one by one. Both Gray and Saria start killing a bunch of ogres without trouble. They efficiently deal with every last one of the ogres. Saria says that Gray wasn't half bad for this being his first real fight. Gray asks his master to stay alert as they were just getting started. He found it weird that the ogres were way too weak. If they were this weak, his master should not have had any trouble dealing with them by herself, unless the monster within the tent was something greater than an elite ogre. He looks inside and sees its red eyes staring at him from within. Gray realizes that they had run into a trap. Gray says that they have to run away fast. Saria asks what happened. Gray tells her to just start running. The both of them start running, but above them an elite ogre leaps ahead to block their exit. It lands in front of them. Saria laughs, saying that it was nice for the boss to show himself. Gray shouts and says that the elite ogre wasn't the boss. Just then he was interrupted by a loud roar. Hundreds of ogres come rushing towards them, looking enraged. Saria starts getting nervous. It was something far stronger than an elite ogre, an ogre general, the true boss of the ogre nest. It had skill that allowed it to control large armies. Saria says that this wasn't a monster that they could handle on their own. She turns back and says that they should kill the elite ogre and run. She clashes swords with the ogre and takes an opening and lands a hit on its shoulder. But in front of her eyes, the wound that she just caused starts healing. Gray says that there was no use. The ogre general's roar boosts their allies' strengths and recovery powers. Saria says that she felt the elite ogre was stronger than usual, and that it felt like she couldn't defeat one single elite ogre. Gray cuts down a lesser ogre and asks if he could leave his back to his master. He tells her to buy him some time. Saria asks what he was planning to do. Gray says that there was only one choice, and that was to take down the ogre general. While he tries to make it to the ogre general, he keeps getting flanked. He finds it annoying, but still pushes through. He thinks that he should focus on wiping all the enemies in front of him to make sure they won't interfere with him. He slashes at the ogre, but his sword shatters. Its strengthened ogres were eating away at the durability of the sword. The ogre takes its chance, but Gray jumps back and throws away the broken sword. He has a spare sword, but he knows that it's a matter of time before that one breaks as well. Saria throws her spare sword at Gray after hearing his weapon break. Gray thanks her before turning back to face his enemies. He knows that even with two swords it's impossible to deal with all the enemies along with the ogre general. He puts his sword back and bursts forward through an army of ogres, cutting them as he goes, dodging their strikes barely and blocking attacks that he couldn't dodge. But as time went on, it only felt like they were growing in numbers. To make matters worse, the ogre general roars once again, causing the ogres to get strengthened even further. They start going crazy. He wonders if the ogre general saw through his plans. He says that the ogre general was smarter than he thought. Then he tries to block a strike. This time, he gets pushed back because of the increased strength. he dashes through the army once again, knowing that he didn't have time to deal with all the ogres anymore. While running, he gets tackled by one of the ogres. Another strikes at him, not caring about friendly fire. They were trying to wear down his swords by throwing themselves at him. An ogre from the side prepares to punch him. He blocks it with his cracked sword, but still gets sent flying back. He coughs out blood from the impact. His sword was broken once again. He was down to his last sword. He asks how he was supposed to deal with the hordes of ogres, and the general, with just one sword. From all the experience he had as a soldier, he knew that there was no chance of victory. He decides to make a choice, and calls his master, and tells her to run away while they were focused on him. Saria smiles, and says that she can't do that. Gray asks if she was planning on dying for no reason. He assures her that he will immediately run after her, and asks her not to worry about him. She says that he got it wrong. She looks down at her leg, and says that she couldn't physically run anymore. Blood was gushing out of a wound in her leg. Gray was out of options. He was given an opportunity to travel back in time so that he could defeat the liquidators, and yet it was all going to end once again. He slashes at a charging ogre in anger, causing his last sword to break. He couldn't accept that he was going to die in a hellhole like this. He refuses to accept it. He thinks that if he could use the power he used against the liquidator, if he could just tap into that power for a moment, then these enemies in front of him were nothing more than ants. He tries to remember the sensation he felt back then. He gets into position with his broken sword. He closes his eyes to remember the sensation, and then opens his eyes. He flashes with the red aura that cuts through the ogres like butter. Saria looks back at Gray after hearing the loud attack. She sees him in the middle of the dust clouds. He looks back and says that it was all right now. All the ogres in front of him were cut in half. The ogre general's sword also snaps in half along with his body. The elite ogre attacks Saria after seeing her distracted, but she easily stops it this time. That attack was way too light. She says that elite ogre sure did give her a hard time while cutting it to pieces. She says that without the generals strengthening, the ogre was nothing in front of her. Gray says that they managed to win somehow. He apologizes for breaking her sword. Saria says that she doesn't mind and thanks him for saving her life. Gray hands her the broken sword, and she tries to ask him about the attack he just performed, but Gray falls before she could finish her words. She shouts his name and tries to wake him, but he was unconscious. He opens his eyes in a dark room, with a huge door right in front of him. He feels a familiar aura leaking from the other side of the door. After seeing it, he instantly recognizes that it was the same power he was using. He wonders if he was going to get more powerful if he opened the locked door. He slowly makes his way towards the door, but as soon as he gets close, he feels like he was grabbed by something. He quickly jumps back. He doesn't know what happened, but one thing was for sure. If he had opened the door as he was now, he would have definitely died. A faint voice behind the door says that he made a wise call. He opens his eyes back in the real world, gasping for air. Saria asks if he was all right and why he was breathing so heavily. Gray asks where he was at. Saria tells him that it was the village infirmary. She says that he was unconscious for 5 days now and that she was getting worried that he wasn't going to wake up again. Gray says that he pushed himself a little too far and that maybe it took a toll on his body. Saria says that a little too far doesn't describe what he did. She asks if his body was all right now, if he could move everything fine. Gray starts to check, but he couldn't muster any strength in his right arm. He could move it if he tried hard enough, but it was still not enough to hold a sword. And then there were black bruises around his right arm. Saria asks if he couldn't move his hand. He explains that he can't put any strength into his dominant arm. Saria says that she thought as much. She tells him that his arm won't heal anytime soon, as all the bones on his right arm were in pieces after he performed that attack. Gray asks if it was really true, seeing that he wasn't feeling any pain at all. Saria says they had treated him with a magic potion. Gray asks if they were crazy to use something so expensive on him. Saria sits down on the bed next to him and asks him to calm down, as it was given to her by the village chief. Gray asks why the village chief would do something like that. Saria asks why Gray would even ask something like that. She tells him that he was the hero of the village. Gray was lost for words. Just then the village chief bursts the door open looking for Gray. Gray quickly thanks the chief for giving him the magic potion, but the chief says that it was him who should be thanking Gray. He says that it was an ogre general that they were talking about, a monster that wasn't even scratched after the forces from all the surrounding towns gathered to fight, and that monster was targeting a small village like theirs. The chief grabs Gray's hands and says that if Gray hadn't killed the monster, the village would have been gone by now. He thanks Gray and Saria for protecting his village. He says that none of them would have been here if it weren't for Gray and Saria. Gray says that the chief was exaggerating it a bit. The chief says that Gray should know that he wasn't exaggerating anything. Looking back at it, Gray thinks that maybe the chief was right. In the world before he time traveled, the village was supposed to have been destroyed by the ogre attack. The chief says that he could gladly explain the significance of what Gray did for them, but firstly asks if Gray wasn't going to the entrance exam for the World Union Academy. Gray had completely forgotten about that. He went to kill the ogres a week before the exams, and he had been asleep for 5 days. That meant he only had 2 more days, and it was a 3-day walk to the World Union Academy from his village. He could get there in a day with a horse, but he didn't have such money. Gray asks if he could borrow the chief's horse. The chief says that he had already prepared the best horse in the village for Gray. Saria says that they were about to carry him to the academy in his sleep if he didn't wake up today. When Gray opens the door to go outside, he is greeted by the cheers of the whole village. They were holding banners to thank him and wish him luck at the academy. They thank him for saving the village. One of the villagers comes to him to give him a pouch. Gray asks what it was. The man explains that the whole village had chipped in for Gray since they had heard that it was very expensive to apply to the World Union Academy. Gray was moved by this gesture. He thanks them for their support while going to the horse. He says that coming back to the village was now hard if he failed after seeing the people's support. Saria asks him not to worry. She says that not a single applicant in the World Union Academy was capable of beating an ogre general other than him. Gray says that his dominant arm was now useless. Saria says that he can just use his left arm in that case. Gray asks if it was enough. Saria tells him that it was more than enough and that he didn't even need to use his special powers to get in either. Gray still thinks that the entrance exam to the most prestigious academy would not be that lenient for him to be able to pass, while using just one arm. Saria assures him that the academy examiners weren't that blind to overlook his ability. She guarantees that he would definitely pass the exam. Gray thanks her and says that he gained a little more confidence now that he talked to her. He departs from the village, and the villagers follow him till the village entrance to bid him goodbye. After a while of traveling, he makes it to the academy. He thanks his horse for being so reliable. While crossing the bridge to the academy, it was a fortress city in the middle of a lake, with the academy in the middle. The World Union Academy. A few days later, all the participants gather in an arena, and the examiner tells them that she will be distributing the exam tickets now. She asks them to stay in the arena until the entire process was complete. The examinees start talking to each other. Some ask if it was real that only 20 people from everyone within the arena were going to pass. Others say that the number of successful candidates changes from year to year. He says that there were even 50 students accepted in some years, and in others there were as low as 1 student. Professor Ariel walks up to the podium and says that they can start immediately. She asks the examinees to take the paper that appeared in front of them before snapping her fingers. A golden glow appears in front of her for a moment before spreading throughout the room and turning into exam tickets in front of all the students. Gray was assigned into the fencing course. Ariel says that some students might get surprised to see that there was nothing written in their number and course. She says that it was natural and how it has been every year. She says that the World Union didn't discriminate based on age, gender, nationality, status, or anything else for that matter. Even their name was irrelevant to them. She says that only those who passed the exam and earned the right to cross the bridge were to be asked for their name. They could even go in with a false identity if they preferred. Gray wonders how Ariel managed to determine his course even though he wasn't even carrying his sword with him. Ariel says that she assigned their courses based on how they looked physically. She says that if anyone was unsatisfied with their course, they could raise their hand. Her eyes start glowing blue as she scans the huge crowd. No one raises their hand. The students ask how she could determine everyone's course perfectly. Some think that she might have read their profiles before. Others think she used mind-reading magic on them. Since no one raised their hand, Ariel announces that the timing for their exam would be on their tickets. Just as she said, the timings appear on the paper. Gray's timing was for 11 a.m. on the first day. He was hoping that his time was at the end so he could let his arm heal a bit more, but he was out of luck. Ariel tells them that it was a one-shot practical exam. If they were late, they would be disqualified. She asks them to make sure to come on time. She also tells them that they don't change the schedules as per their requests. Gray still couldn't get much strength into his dominant arm. He hoped that it would be better by the next day. The next day, his arm hadn't changed at all. It was just as bad as before. The examiner tells Gray to go inside. Gray takes a deep breath and walks in. He thinks that he shouldn't be so pessimistic about it since he could still use his left arm and his right arm was movable to some extent. He thinks that he has to use his time wisely to observe his examiner and find an opening. The examiner asks the student before Gray to make the first move. The student runs at the examiner and whacks his sword, but the examiner had dodged easily. The student says that he wasn't done while swinging his sword once again. The examiner blocks the swing easily and parries the student's sword away before hitting him away. The student falls on his back. The examiner says that the student's exam had concluded and asks him to retrieve his weapon and exit the venue. Gray smiles, thinking that he was done for. He gets called up to the arena next. Gray walks up while wondering how he was supposed to beat a man who just beat a guy larger in build than him with one arm. The examiner offers Gray the first move like before. Gray decided to do his best even if he didn't stand a chance. He dashes forward, remembering Saria's teaching that swords weren't just swung with arms, but by the power generated by the entire body through the arms. He says that if his arms weren't able to put forward enough power, he could just drive force through his other muscles. The examiner dodges Gray's first swing. He couldn't fight like he usually could. If swinging a sword without arm strength was easy, then no one would bother training their body in the first place. The instructor swings at Gray next, during which Gray notices something. The instructor's sword was kind of slow. He tries to block it. The swing had insane power, but his speed and technique was nowhere close to his master's. He thinks that he might be able to make up for the difference in arm strength if he relied on his master's swordsmanship. He decides to go on the offense and attack the instructor multiple times. The instructor was getting overwhelmed. He wasn't nearly as strong as Gray thought he was. He remembers how his master said that he would definitely pass. When they clash swords the next time the instructor gets overpowered, this only increases his confidence. Although he had seen through the instructor's swordsmanship, the difference in their power was too great for him to simply break the instructor's form. And it wasn't easy to win while only using his offhand. With that said, the instructor's movements were slowly becoming rougher. He decided to take a risk and let the instructor parry him. Hoping the instructor takes the bait, the instructor bites a wide-open swing. Nothing was more likely to expose such an opening other than a big, predictable swing. Gray dashes past the instructor and goes behind him. No matter the difference in power, he could easily win from behind. But before he could land the attack, he is stopped. Gray wonders if it wasn't too early to stop the fight. The judge says that the time limit for the exam had been reached and that the result was a draw. Gray thinks that he failed. He clenched his sword while leaving, thinking that he did his best regardless. He thinks that it couldn't be helped if he wasn't able to win against the instructor. He thinks that his arm would be completely fixed by the next year and that he could take the exam again then. He thanks the instructor before leaving. 1 week later, inside the meeting room, the headmaster asks for the others' thoughts on the candidates this year since now the exam was over. One professor says that he was tired. Another says that the method of all of them observing each fight was rather inefficient and says that they should divide the workload for the next year. Another professor says that they can't just afford to overlook a talent simply for the sake of making things easy for themselves. The headmaster says that he asked their thoughts on the students, not the efficiency of the exam system. He uses magic to pull up the footage of promising students from the swordsmanship courses and asks who have passed. The professor says that they should naturally pass all those who have beat the examiners and base the rest of the students on the quality they showed and how they held out during the 15-minute time limit. The swordsmanship professor says that other than those who beat the examiner, only candidate number 5, 217, and 753 caught his eyes. He says that they should keep it at that, as even if the others joined, they wouldn't be able to keep up with the others. The other magic professor agrees and asks if anyone else thought otherwise. The whole room stays silent. The headmaster assumes that that was it and proceeds to talk about the magic course. Professor Ariel cuts him off and asks what they thought about candidate 513, which was Gray. The others start looking for his recording and start watching it. They say that although it looked like he was going to win, he had to rely on setting up a trap just to beat an examiner, and things would be hard for him to follow in the course. Although his technique was good, his strength was lacking. Professors think that he was outmatched by the examiner from the start to end. The sword instructor says that he was no good. The others also agree. Ariel sighs. She thinks that even though she had so many of them watch him, not one of them noticed what she did. She thinks that if the other professors were this blind, having them observe together was really just a waste. The next day, the students were said to gather near a watchtower. They announced that the names of the successful candidates for the swordsmanship course were about to be announced. They say that there were 6 candidates that have passed. The tickets of those who were about to be called would start burning. They call candidate number 5, number 217, number 432 and 615, numbers 753 and 925. That was all. Those were the 6 candidates that were selected. They asked the successful students to cross the bridge to complete their enrollment. Some celebrate getting selected. Gray understands that he had failed. Just then the announcer says that they were going to announce the Divine Eye special admission. They call candidate number 513 and Gray's ticket starts burning. The crowd immediately all stare at Gray. Gray asks what this means. Some of the failed students start laughing. This was the first time he heard about Divine Eye admission. The students start saying that Gray was just backdoored into the academy. They say that the World Union Academy really had fallen. But Gray had no connections. He wonders if it was his master's doing, but he would have heard about it if it was. One of the old instructors tells the students not to mock the Divine Eye special admissions like that. He says that it was a special honorable category that had produced heroes for over 100 years. The students say that it was just a tale of the old. The recent successful Divine Eye candidates like Amy White and Bella Albright were complete failures. All the other students start laughing, saying that they were right. Amy White and Bella Albright, even Jacob Bloomfield, all 3 of them were part of the main force against the Liquidator, and now his name was alongside theirs. The announcer then tells the students that they have 30 minutes till the entrance ceremony began. He asks them to change into their uniform and assemble in the plaza in front of the main office. Gray puts on his uniform and walks with the other students towards the plaza. But there was no plaza in front of the main office. An instructor comes up to them while apologizing and asks if the students could step back a little, as they were delaying the setup. He asks them to step behind the magic circle so he could build the plaza. The students leave the circle, and the instructor thanks them while going back to the center. He crouches down in the center and says that he was ready now. The circle starts glowing, and the plaza starts appearing from within the ground. The plaza was fully built within minutes. The instructor thanks them for their patience and asks them to sit wherever they liked. The students ask if the man just teleported a whole building by himself. Gray assumes that they just wanted to hold the ceremony where they could see the whole school building from. He gets excited after seeing the extravagant welcome. After they populated the seats, some of the students ask if the number of seats weren't too excessive since only 30 students were accepted and that there was no need for so many seats. The girl next to him asks if he really didn't know how the school system worked. The boy apologizes and says that he learned how to use the sword and nothing else. She says that she could just explain it to him in that case. She explains that as the name suggests, the World Union Academy gathered the best students from around the world, not just this kingdom. She asks him to look at the sky as a bunch of airships and dragons came into view. The boy, shocked, asks how a ship was flying. Gray notices the ship, the magic airship named the Strato Queen, the same ship he had boarded once when he was part of the Liquidator subjugation squad. It was one of the largest airships in the world. He was surprised that the World Union would bring something like that out just for an entrance ceremony. The airships start landing outside the plaza, and a bunch of students flood out. The instructor asks everyone to get seated before beginning the entrance ceremony. After hearing a long speech from the headmaster, Gray thinks that even the World Union Academy ceremony wasn't much different from a normal one. The announcer says that it was time for the top student from each course to give a greeting. They call on Leon Hart, the top student of the swordsmanship course, to come forward. The students say that this guy beat the instructor in an instant during the entrance exam. The other students say that he was already as good as any of the professors when it comes to swordsmanship. Leon Hart appears. Gray thinks that he has seen this guy before. Then Leon Hart asks if he was allowed to speak freely. The professor allows it. He looks back at the crowd of students and says that he had one complaint he would like to make to the academy. Firstly, he addresses his fellow students, then he corrects himself and addresses the students that were admitted the proper way. He says that it was an honor to be admitted to this academy with the rest of them. He says that he hopes all of them may graduate as capable individuals and make meaningful contributions to the world. He asks them to work hard to reach the goal with him. He says that he looks forward to the days when they could aim high together as the students of the prestigious World Union Academy. But then he turns to Professor Ariel and says that unfortunately among them there were some who didn't deserve to be there, and asks if he wasn't correct, while calling the professor out while she was resting her eyes. She was surprised to suddenly get called out, but she assures that all students present have passed the same rigorous exam. Although some weren't as strong as Leonhardt, she doesn't think it was a wise idea to exclude them. She asks why he was asking her this. Leonhardt says that he wasn't talking about those who were admitted by passing the exams, but the student that she backdoored into her Divine Eye special admission. He looks back at the students and asks that student who was specially admitted to show himself and return their uniform and leave the academy right now. No one shows themselves. Gray wonders why this guy was so hostile towards the special admissions. He was thankful that Leon didn't know his face and assumes that he wouldn't be caught if he stayed away from Leon. Professor asks if the students this year weren't lively. Leonhardt says that he was being serious and tells her to stop admitting students by backdooring them. Ariel appears behind him before he could finish his sentence and asks if Leon thought he was stronger than the Divine Eye student. Everyone in the plaza gasps in unison. Leon was shocked at her question. He asks if she was joking. He says that he was for sure stronger than a special admission student and asks if she was doubting him. Ariel says that she likes his attitude and offers to make a bet. Leon asks if she was serious. Ariel says that she was betting with her job and the Divine Eye special student's admission at stake. Gray wonders why he was being dragged into this. Leon asks if Professor Ariel was planning to make him fight the special admission kid. Ariel says that she wouldn't do something so boorish. She says that if the special admission kid went all out, then Leon would surely die. And as an educator, she couldn't put one of her students' lives at risk like that. She hits a nerve. Leon asks if Ariel was provoking him. Ariel says that she was just stating facts. She says that they can make their bet about monsters instead. That way Leon would be safer. She asks if he wasn't more experienced in fighting monsters himself. Leon says that Ariel was quite well informed. He asks what the bet was exactly. Ariel says that it was simple, just to kill the monster that she picked as a target. Each round the monster will be getting stronger, and whoever couldn't defeat the monster first would lose. She says that if Gray lost, she would retire from her position as professor, and all the special admission students would be expelled. And if Leon lost, he had to do whatever she says. She asks if those terms were fair for him. Leon asks her to tell him the target monster first. He says that although he was confident he could handle any opponent, he would rather not get caught up in some weird setup. Ariel thinks for a second and says that the first target was an Orange General. She asks if it was too easy for him. The student discussions start getting louder. Gray wonders why she specifically chose an Orange General, getting suspicious of his master. Leon slams his hand on the podium and asks if she was joking. He says that an Orange General wasn't a monster someone could kill by themselves. She says that she wasn't asking him to do it immediately and offers to set a time frame of 1 whole year to finish the task. Leon protests again, saying that if someone could single-handedly take down a disaster-level monster with just a year of training, then people wouldn't suffer. He asks her to choose a more realistic target. Then he realizes something. He says that he sees through her trick. He says that she deliberately chose an enemy that no one could defeat, so that she could declare that there was no clear winner. He says that he won't agree to this. Ariel says that she can add another condition to it, that if it was a draw, then it would be considered Leon's victory. She says that if the Divine Eye student failed to defeat the Orange General, then she would be fired and all the special students would also be expelled. She asks if that was enough. Leon asks if she was insane. He feels that the outcome of the bet was already decided. She starts walking back to her chair after confirming that there were no more objections. Leon says that the Orange General couldn't be one that was already weakened. Ariel says that was a given. She uses her magic to write a contract and asks him to sign it if he had no more objections. Leon agrees and quickly signs the contract. While she walked back to her seat, she asks if he seriously thought that the special admission could win. She takes a seat again and says that it was up to the student now. The other professors whisper, wondering what was wrong with her, and saying things like the old raccoon maybe wished to retire, using this bet as an excuse. They say that she was way past her prime now. She doesn't give them any mind. Gray sighs now that he has one more thing to worry about. Then he goes back to when she said that they would include the time frame of this whole year, meaning the one he killed before was also included in that time frame. He wonders if she did that on purpose. When he looks at her on the stage, she was looking right back at him. Their eyes meet, and she gestures him to keep it a secret, confirming his suspicion. Later in the class, the magic professor starts the class on basics of magic. He says that he understands that most of them weren't happy having a lecture on the first day, but asks them to understand that as students of the World Union Academy, they didn't have a single day to waste. He says that they were going to start with the most basic of basics, the utilization of magic. He tells them that everyone is born with an invisible energy called ether in their body, and by manipulating it through the magic circuits in their body, they could use magic. He continues with this long explanation, while Gray thinks that he was afraid that he couldn't keep up with the class, but it looked easier than normal. He had already heard this same explanation on this topic back at the boot camp. But the problem now was the fact that he ended up in the same class as Leon of all people. He hopes that Leon doesn't find out that he was the special admission student. The professor points at him and asks if Gray was bored. He says that Gray was already looking away in less than 5 minutes. He says that Gray has some nerve. Gray apologizes while wondering how the professor even noticed when he was sitting at the very back. The professor closes his book and says that if Gray was so confident he should show the class. He asks if Gray could use basic magic. Gray says that this was a swordsman course, and that he thought it would be fine if he couldn't use magic as a swordsman. The professor says that even if that was the case, in a real fight a swordsman still needs to know the basics so they can coordinate better with a mage. He remembers that his explanation was the same as the one given in boot camp. He wonders if the spell was also the same. Gray asks if the professor was going to teach them the spell called Ether Bullet. The professor asks if Gray knows the spell and asks if he can use it. Gray says that he can. He was thankful that it was this spell because he had to go through hell to learn it in boot camp. The professor says that this was a good opportunity and says that they should have a match. He asks Leon if he could also use Ether Bullet. Leon stands and says that it was a given that he knows that spell, but he says that he hasn't just trained as a swordsman, but also in magic before he even started school. He asks if it wasn't risky for him to go against an amateur. The professor says that no matter how high the skill gap was, since they were only using Ether Bullet, it wouldn't kill Gray. He also says that he wasn't asking Leon to hold back either. He snitches on Gray and tells Leon that Gray was this year's Divine Eye student. The whole class looks back at Gray. Gray wonders if the professor was doing this on purpose. Leon quickly accepts now after hearing that. He says that he would properly show Gray the proper way to use the spell, that he would show Gray the level of the academy. He tells Gray to step down quick. The professor tells them to shoot their Ether Bullet when he gives them the signal. He had only spent a few days learning magic at the boot camp. Even though the professor said that Gray wasn't going to die, it didn't look to him like he was getting out of this unscathed. The professor gives the signal and Leon says that he was going to show Gray the difference in their strength. Gray thinks that he has no choice but to give it his best. Both of them shoot their Ether Bullet, both surprised at the size of the other's bullet. Gray's Ether Bullet completely engulfs Leon's and flies straight toward him. The professor tries to stop it and barely manages to create a shield in front of Leon. He says that it would have been bad if he was even a moment late. His shield starts to crack and then explodes, sending a shockwave that hits everyone in the class. Leon is sent flying back. The professor runs to him, asking if he's all right. Leon gets back on his feet and says that he's fine. The professor then looks at Gray, a cold sweat rolling down his cheek. He thinks that if the barrier hadn't dampened the impact, it could have actually killed Leon. Even among the professors, no one could cast an Ether Bullet that strong. He asks what Gray just did. Gray wonders why Leon's bullet looked so weak. It definitely didn't seem like the same spell he used. He starts thinking that maybe the Ether Bullet he was taught was different from the one taught at the academy. He asks if he used the wrong spell. The professor says that it was definitely an Ether Bullet, but the quality of Gray's was not normal. It was an extremely compressed form of ether. The other students whisper that they've never heard of something like that. The professor says that this kind of power was something even professors had trouble producing. Yet in that moment, Gray managed to form and control it perfectly. He adds that there wasn't a single person in the academy who could replicate what Gray just did. The students start murmuring that this must be why he was chosen as the Divine Eye special student. Some even suggest that with magic talent like this, Gray should be in the magic course instead. Gray thinks there's something off. Every spell he learned in boot camp worked like this, and back there, he was considered below average in magic. Gray jokes that maybe the professor was playing a prank on him, saying that anyone should be able to pull off something that simple with enough practice. The professor bursts into laughter, confusing Gray even more. He laughs louder, grabs Gray by the shoulders, and tells him to transfer to the magic course. He'd personally vouch for him. He insists that Gray is clearly more talented at magic than swordsmanship. Leon says that Gray has to be joking, since he was told he wasn't good at magic. The professor stares at him in disbelief, saying that if Gray could understand ether compression at his age, he should be considered an unparalleled prodigy. He even says he'd stake his name on it. Whoever told Gray he was bad at magic must have had no idea what they were talking about. He asks if Gray is ready to transfer, saying it'd be a loss to the world if he didn't study magic. He even calls it a crime against magic. Gray laughs nervously, but then remembers something from boot camp. He recalls being told that in the past, people didn't even know something called OD, also known as life force, existed. The sage explained that before the discovery of OD, it was extremely difficult to cast proper magic. They had to constantly compress ether in their body and try to gather the bits that happened to mix with OD by chance. Looking back, the sage said it was quite laughable. Gray asks the professor if he knows what OD is, but the man looks completely confused, confirming that this world hasn't discovered it yet. That means the knowledge he learned at boot camp was from the future. The professor asks again if Gray will transfer to the magic course. Gray apologizes and says he's loyal to the way of the sword, rejecting the offer. The professor sighs, saying it can't be helped, but tells Gray that if he ever changes his mind, to come to him first. He then dismisses the tension by saying that Gray can go back to his seat and that he won't scold him anymore for looking away during class. He even says he wouldn't mind if Gray skipped class entirely, since the lessons are too basic for him anyway. The other students whisper in amazement at how highly the professor thinks of Gray as he walks back to his seat. Meanwhile, behind him, Leon grabs his chest while glaring at Gray with a completely different look than before, sending chills down Gray's spine. Later that day, Gray walks through the hallway reading a letter from Professor Ariel, asking him to come to her office. He wonders why she called him on the first day. Maybe Professor Carlos told her about what happened. He thinks she might also be planning to ask him to switch courses. He holds the letter in front of the office door, and the insignia on it lights up. Before he can knock, Ariel's voice calls out, saying the door isn't locked and he can come in. Gray steps inside and greets her, when suddenly, someone charges at him from the side with a sword. He quickly draws his blade and intercepts the strike. Shocked, he wonders why she attacked him. The girl stumbles back, and then Gray realizes he's seen her somewhere before. Professor Ariel says that it wasn't bad. She knew her eyes weren't wrong. One of the other professors asks if Bella was holding back, and if Professor Ariel told her to go easy on Gray. Another says that Bella's movements were flawless, but her sword was knocked out of her hand so easily that it looked unnatural. Gray now realizes that this girl bore a striking resemblance to the sorceress, Bella Albright. Ariel asks if the two professors were really saying such things. She tells them that if they can't even tell whether Bella was holding back, they should consider quitting as professors. One of them laughs nervously and says he was only joking while handing Ariel something. She catches a handful of gold coins and smiles, saying she admits she was right. Gray asks what's going on. Ariel says they were just betting on whether he could fend off Bella's surprise attack. She thanks him for earning her good money. Then she tosses him a gold coin, saying that was his cut. A single gold coin, worth a fortune for someone like Gray. Another professor says he noticed something odd about Gray during the fight. From that exchange, it looked like Gray was deliberately avoiding using his dominant arm, almost as if he was protecting an immobile one. He asks if it was because of an injury. The other professor adds that it didn't seem like a simple muscle injury, but something deeper. They both agree that a normal wound wouldn't cause such restriction. Gray asks if they could really tell all that just by looking. They laugh and say that they wouldn't be professors at the academy if they couldn't at least do this much. They add that Professor Ariel had probably already realized it during the entrance exam. Ariel tells them that if they have no further business, they can leave. She has no intention of handing over her new student. The two professors sigh, saying they'll admit his potential for now, but if his wound doesn't heal, it'll be considered a failure to meet the academy's admission standards. They tell him to keep that in mind before leaving. Once they're gone, Ariel says that now that the nuisances are out of the way, she wants to talk about magic. She mentions that she heard from Professor Carlos about him supercompressing ether in class. She says that Carlos came to her office personally, asking her to hand Gray over to the magic course, but of course, she refused. In her eyes, Gray was far more suited to wield the sword than to study magic. She says that he doesn't look like someone who's practiced magic compression at all. Gray thinks that Uriel's eyes must have some special ability that allows her to see the truth. Deciding it's best not to lie, he admits that she's right. Ariel then asks him to tell her the exact trick he used to produce such powerful magic. She promises she won't tell anyone and even offers him a reward. She says she really needs to know how to do it, for Bella's sake. Gray asks what the sorceress has to do with it, then quickly corrects himself and calls her Bella. Ariel explains that although Bella is a genius when it comes to magical theory, she struggles with practical use. For some reason, she can't perform the ether compression technique properly. That's why she can't super compress ether either. Gray recalls hearing that Bella Albright was a late bloomer and now understands why. Ariel continues, saying that according to Professor Carlos, when Gray used super compressed ether, it didn't look like he compressed anything at all. If there's a way to create super compressed ether without actually compressing it, then Bella wouldn't have to be sent to Professor Bradley. Gray sets down his teacup and asks if she means Varian Bradley. Ariel looks surprised that Gray already knows who he is. But how could he not? Varian Bradley, a psychopath who conducted countless human experiments, killing many in the process. He caused the great magic disaster that resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, one of the worst criminals in the world. Gray wonders if someone like that is still roaming free at this point in time. Ariel tells him that if Bella can't create super compressed ether by the end of the year, she'll be sent to that man to undergo surgery. Gray asks if that isn't insane, and Ariel agrees. She explains that although the surgery is presented as a procedure to enhance magical ability, it's actually human experimentation. It's not public yet, but there are rumors that some have already died or been left broken because of it. Bella says quietly that although the surgery is dangerous and terrifying, if she can't super compress ether, she'll be expelled by the end of the year anyway. Ariel says she would rather Bella quit the academy than let that psychopath tamper with her body. Gray thinks about it. The magic he knows is knowledge that doesn't exist yet. If he reveals it, it could change the course of history. But when he looks at Bella's trembling hands, he remembers how the Liquidator in his time wiped out even the strongest of them effortlessly. Maybe changing the future isn't such a bad thing. Gray finally says that he understands. He'll teach Bella how to super compress ether. A few minutes later, in the arena, Gray begins explaining the theory, exactly how Bella had once taught him in the future. He tells them that this is all the knowledge he has about magic and asks them to keep it secret as promised. Ariel asks him not to worry as they had already signed a magic contract with him. Bella tells him that they would die if they broke the promise. He asks if they understood what he told them. Ariel says that learning about OD alone blew her mind, but the knowledge of the magic he revealed was even beyond that. Bella says that it was brief and well-organized, and that it felt like listening to a magic class from hundreds of years into the future. She says that just hearing the explanation advanced the history of magic by 100 years. Gray laughs nervously, knowing that the whole thing was from a lecture she gave about 10 years from now. Ariel says that there was a lot of information that she couldn't judge properly. She asks if Bella thinks this is all true. Bella says that there was a very good chance that the theory was correct, as none of it contradicted the current theory of magic. She says that the fastest way to find out was to test it since they were already in the arena. She looks at Gray and says that if everything he said was true, then the spell should work. He looks at the spell she gave him while she walks off. She starts casting it with her full strength. Gray asks what she means by full strength. He had heard that she could burn down kingdoms with one spell if she wanted. Moreover, she was said to be unable to properly control her powerful magic output. Gray tries to stop her, but it was too late. He feels his soul leaving his body as a huge beam bursts towards the sky. The power output was overwhelming. If she hadn't taken control of the flames a split second before it reached him, he would have been a goner. She says that she really managed to do it, and she could also control it too. She starts taking it further and reshapes the flames into an infernal dragon. She says that it was too much fun, but then she suddenly starts wobbling and falls to the ground. Gray quickly tries to wake her, asking if she was all right. Ariel tells him to relax. She says that Bella simply fell asleep because she ran out of ether. She asks Gray to let Bella rest. She then looks at the remnants of the flames that were slowly dying out in the sky and says that it was marvelous to see Bella put together magic on that scale in such a short amount of time. Bella mumbles that it was the theory that was amazing, not her. Gray wonders how she was answering back while she was asleep and that it was her own theory. Ariel laughs, saying that now that Bella can create super compressed ether, she no longer needs that surgery. She says that she will personally call it off. Ariel says that she was glad that they could avoid the risky surgery and also thankful that Bella didn't lose her magic control. Gray asks what she means. Ariel says that although Bradley's surgery could increase one's magical output, it came at the expense of control. Exactly how it worked was a secret, but it seemed like the surgery forcibly broke one's limiter. Gray thinks that this might be why Bella, the sorceress in the past world, couldn't control her powerful magic. It was because of the surgery. Ariel thanks Gray for fulfilling his end of the contract. She says that it is now her turn to do the same. She says that she will start with his arm. She has a magic that she wanted to use on it. She casts that magic. A bunch of blue magical butterflies appear all around them and start flooding into his arm. Ariel asks if he can feel the difference. Gray tries to put strength into his fist. He could finally fully move his arm. He thanks the professor, but then asks how she could fix an arm that even the magical healing potion couldn't cure. She tells him not to compare her restoration magic with an average healing potion. She asks if his arm was really moving the way it used to. She asks him to try swinging a sword at least to find out. Gray takes her advice and swings his sword, and it feels a little weird. He tries to make a longer attack. He says that it doesn't feel like it was moving like it used to. Ariel says that she thought as much. She says that she may have repaired his nerves, but her magic couldn't heal the wounds in his soul. Gray asks what she means by his soul. She says that she was sure he had heard it already. She says that the magic knowledge he provided today hasn't proven the existence of one's soul yet, but she believes that it exists. She takes off the glasses covering her eye. She says that she could see it with her eyes. Even now, his soul was slowly healing. She says that he will heal naturally as long as he doesn't overexert himself. He asks if he should refrain from practicing with his sword. She says that it's fine if he exercises as he normally did. Rather than that, she says she was more interested in what kind of swordsmanship could harm one's soul like that. She asks if Gray knew who Amy White was. Gray wonders why Ariel would mention the name of the sword saint here. Ariel asks if she was wrong to assume that they knew each other. The way he wields his sword gave her the impression he learned it from Amy, but on second thought, she thinks it was slightly different. She says that the person who taught Gray his swordsmanship seems a little more skilled than Amy. She says that if he gave Amy a few years to improve, she would be just as skilled as Gray's master. Gray lies and says that he learned it from a dojo in his hometown. He had to try changing the topic before he ended up spilling everything. He asks if it was even possible for one's soul to be damaged from swordsmanship. She says that it wasn't possible for any ordinary swordsmanship to be that harmful. But to begin with, there was no way that something ordinary could defeat an ogre general with just one slash, not to mention cutting down the surrounding ogres and trees too. He asks if she knew that even before. She says that she did. She says that she practically already won the bet because of that. She says that she had seen some of the remains left at the scene, and that it was magnificent. She says that not even the most sophisticated cleaving magic could cut something in half so cleanly. She asks if he wasn't the one who used the mysterious power within him. He asks if she can see the power within him. She says that she can. She asks him about the power leaking through the door. He remembers seeing the chained room in his dream. It wasn't something someone could just figure out by guessing, meaning she could really see it. She says that she had seen similar powers to his before. Although she doesn't think they were the same, it had the same vibe. He asks if there were others just like him. Ariel says that there were, although she wouldn't consider them human. She says that they were called the Liquidator. Seeing his reaction, she figures that he had already heard about them. The Liquidators should not even be known this far back in time. She says that the Liquidators weren't well known, but with him knowing all the futurist-looking magic theory, she wasn't surprised about him knowing about them. Gray laughs nervously. She asks him if he knew much about the Liquidators. Gray says that he only knows that the Liquidator was an extremely dangerous threat to humanity. He says that the Liquidator has to be stopped before his arrival, and if that can't be stopped, then he must be destroyed no matter what it takes. She says that his views were a little extreme, but she agrees that the Liquidators were dangerous, even though Bradley seems intent on continuing his experiments. Gray asks how Varian was related to this. Ariel seems confused. She says that the Liquidators were the very beings that Varian was trying to summon into this world. Gray couldn't believe it, to think that the Liquidators were man-made. No one ever said something like that. Then again, the Academy in the last timeline acted as if they knew exactly where the Liquidator would appear. He wonders if the Academy was involved in summoning them all along. Gray says that the experiments have to be stopped immediately. Ariel agrees, but unfortunately, the one running it was a professor just like her, and she didn't have authority to shut him or his experiments down. She had already pushed the higher-ups to cancel it, but they wouldn't listen. He asks who these higher-ups were. Ariel says that she didn't have the authority to tell him that either, but the bottom line was that without orders from above, no one could force the experiments to stop. Without even a name, it looked like the Academy leadership was more tangled than he thought. But since that man was a criminal, wouldn't that change things? In the last world, Varian's illegal experiments killed tens of thousands. Even Gray knew where he carried them out. Gray tells Ariel that he knows where Varian conducts his illegal experiments and says that they should catch him red-handed. Ariel says that it won't work. Gray asks what she means. She tells him that entering an academy professor's research facility without permission was a serious crime on its own, and if he doesn't produce hard evidence, then Gray would be the one who would be locked up. She asks if he already had the proofs of his crimes. If not, she advises Gray to shelve his ideas for the time being. Gray clenches his hands and says that he understands. She then asks if he doesn't want to talk about learning how to control his mysterious power. Gray asks if she can teach him. Ariel says that there's a professor in the academy who's very good at dealing with unknown forces. She says that his name was Heathkit Longfellow. It was the professor that had trained the Sword Saint herself. She says that she will arrange for him to start private training with him starting tomorrow. Gray accepts the offer since the very reason he came to the academy was to master this power of his. He wasn't expecting to get a lead this fast. The next day, while running through the jungle, Gray thinks that he was thankful to be able to receive private lessons from Heathkit Longfellow himself, but he wonders why they were running like this in the middle of the jungle. Longfellow says that he can feel Gray's mind wandering elsewhere. He says that if Gray had room for stray thoughts, then they could pick up the pace. He asks Gray to run until his body was at its absolute limit. He asks Gray to listen well. That only after every drop of physical strength was burned away does the soul power awaken. He says that Gray won't get to touch a sword if he has even a scrap of stamina left. Gray thinks that if Heathkit was saying this, then it should have a meaning, but the fact that when he was out here running laps here, Varian was out there experimenting to summon the Liquidator. He wonders if he should really be doing this right now. After a week of training, Ariel asks how the training was going. Gray says that he has just been running the whole time, and a few sword drills at the very end of the day. He admits that he feels a little stronger. Ariel laughs and says that it sounds exactly like him. Just then someone opens the door behind Gray and asks if he could come in. He gives Ariel a letter and leaves. Ariel reads through the letter and doesn't seem happy about it. Gray asks if everything was all right. The letter was from Varian. He says that the reports that Bella has succeeded in producing super-compressed ether. He says that it sure does look like a power closely resembling it. But after closer examination, it was clear that it wasn't actually compressed ether. He says that her new ability could not be recognized as super-compressed ether. Gray says that this was insanity. Ariel says that Professor Bradley was determined to force Bella into surgery, even if she doesn't need it anymore. Gray asks if she couldn't just refuse it. Ariel says that the contract was already airtight. She says that unless Bradley himself voided the contract, Bella's only choice was expulsion or the surgery. Gray asks if he was crazy. Ariel slams the desk and asks Gray to help her. She asks Gray to tell her where Bradley's lab was. She says that they have to take a risk and expose a criminal so that the contract will be null and void. A smile forms on his face. He asks if she didn't say that it was dangerous without proof. Ariel says that they will make sure to find evidence and that she was putting her faith in Gray. Maybe she had already done so from the start, since her eyes had told her that he had been telling the truth the entire time. She says that it took her a little too long to admit it. She starts walking out while asking him to show where the lab was. She says that together they would bring Bradley's crimes to light. Gray tells her that his lab was located in the mountains near the village of Tirul. Ariel says that she remembers him having an academy-authorized lab there. Gray asks if he was using illegal experiments in an authorized lab. She says that it was the best place for him to do something illegal like this. No one would bat an eyelid, even if he stayed in that place for a long time. And on top of that, no professor from the academy would interfere with another's lab. She says that as long as they could get evidence of his crimes, they shouldn't be charged with breaking into his lab. Just then, Bella knocks on the door, and Ariel asks her to come in. Bella tells Ariel that she just got a letter. Ariel takes it off Bella's hands and asks her not to worry about it and to let her deal with it. Bella asks what she means. She asks if the professor was planning to fight Bradley for her sake all by herself. Ariel smiles and says that he alone was enough for this. Gray walks forward and asks the professor to wait. He says that he's going with her too. Bella says that she was also going with them because it was her own problem. Ariel tells them to hold on. She reminds them that they were against a professor and a lunatic who has repeatedly conducted dangerous human experiments. She says that there was no saying what he would do if he caught one of them. Gray says that this was more the reason for her to not go alone. Gray says that he could use the same power he used against the Ogre General. so he could be of some help to Ariel. And besides, if she disappeared then, as a Divine Eye admission student, he would be expelled too. He asks them to at least let them decide their own fate. Ariel gives up, knowing full well that they would still come even if she stopped them. She says that she would let them go under one condition. She tells them to prioritize their own safety first when in that lab. They both unisonly agree. Before they make their way to the mountains, in front of the lab, Bella asks if Bradley was really doing illegal experiments there. Ariel says that he was, and that they were here to look for evidence of that now. She asks if that wasn't the case to Gray. Gray asks that this was definitely the place. Bella says that she trusts them, but asks if they can actually gather evidence without any trouble. Ariel says that Bradley should be in the Magic Society conference right now, but she says that there was a good chance that the entrance was rigged with traps and that they would have to bust through a sidewall instead. Bella asks if it was really okay. She says that being this far into an Academy-authorized area was already a crime anyway, and that she could go back if she changed her mind. She says that she will go in with them and asks if Ariel was sure about doing something like this for someone like her. Gray says that she was wrong. He tells Bella that stopping Bradley was for the world's sake. He says that if they don't do this now, countless people were about to die, and the whole world would be sacrificed if his experiments were to succeed. Bella asks what he means. Ariel says that what Gray said may be an exaggeration, but she agrees that they should stop him. She tells Bella to not worry, as they weren't putting their lives at risk because of Bella. She tells them to move fast while running in. She casts magic to destroy the sidewall. Gray wasn't expecting the explosion to be this big. He asks if that wasn't a little excessive. He starts looking inside. It looked less like a lab and more like a prison, a very cruel prison. People chained up, missing limbs, none of them moving. Bella says that there were so many of them. Ariel says that with just one glance, she could see 14 forbidden spells which were all criminal offenses by themselves. She says that there wasn't even a need to mention the unauthorized human experimentations, an equally serious offense. While looking around, they end up in some sort of an altar. Bella asks what they were supposed to do now. Their plan was to leave with evidence, but she asks if they shouldn't rescue the trapped people now. Gray says that they shouldn't stay here for long since Bradley could return any moment. Just then, behind Gray, a voice asks if they were looking for him. Ariel asks what happened to his conference. While he walked up to them, Gray wonders why he was already back. Bradley says that he had arranged for a double to go there in his stead, as he had important experiments to conduct. Ariel asks what he was talking about. Bradley says that he had just gotten his hands on some fresh materials. He says that he would have liked to use them while they were still fresh, until they barged in, changing his plans. He says that it was alright since he wanted material with more potential for magic than an average person anyway. He says that he didn't know how they found out about his experiments, but he was sure they didn't tell anyone before they came. He says that if they were to suddenly disappear, no one could suspect him for a thing. Ariel asks if he was treating people like they were ingredients and asks if he was planning to use them like lab rats. Bradley tells Ariel to relax, as their sacrifice would push the boundaries of magic itself. He says that since he couldn't let them leave alive, he would make sure to put them to the best use possible. Just then, a flame attack flies right at him and explodes on contact. Ariel looks at Bella, who seems like she had heard enough. Bradley starts clapping. He calls it magnificent. Using a shield to stop her attack, he says that the Uriel's divine eye still hadn't lost her edge to think a special admission like Bella would be such an exceptional talent. He asks if he should start looking at the other divine eye recruits a little closer too. He says that he wasn't impressed by their stunt. He asks if a student was trying to assassinate a professor. Bella says that it was better to kill than be killed, though she missed her chance. Ariel says that they should pull back now as they already got the evidence they needed. She says that they could let the Academy handle the rest. Bradley asks if they thought he would just let them leave. He fires a dark magic bullet at Bella. Ariel creates a shield to block it. Bella thanks Ariel for stopping it, but Bradley says that it was pointless. He says that this attack was the fruits of his research called Gluttony Flame. He says that this attack casts a fire that devours defensive magic and turns it into fuel, so it isn't something that can be blocked, but the only downside was that it cost a little rare material to conjure it. His spell starts digging into Ariel's shield, almost breaking in. Ariel casts another shield in front of the previous one, and as the first one breaks, it immediately almost breaks through the second shield. Ariel sends an item to Bella and asks her to take the spell memory pouch to Gray. She says that if Heathkit saw it, he would know what to do. Bella slams her wand on the ground and creates another shield. Ariel asks what they were doing and asks them to quickly leave. Bella says that Uriel's barrier was breaking and asks to let her handle it. Ariel says that they promised her that they would prioritize their lives first. She says that Bradley's magic was clearly unnatural and that defense spells weren't going to work. She says that she will buy them some time so they could leave. Her barrier gets destroyed once again. Bella says that it was fine. As soon as Bradley's attack hits Bella's barrier, it doesn't break. Bella says that Bradley's spell wasn't strong at all. She says that it just needed a slightly different kind of defense magic. Bradley says that this was impossible after seeing his attack being blocked. He says that no one should know how to counter his magic. Bella says that with the new theory she was taught it was very easy to block. He asks what she means. He demands she name the traitor who had betrayed him. She asks if he really wanted to know, but that it was too bad since she was going to keep it a secret. But she does reveal that the one who taught her was a student from the swordsmanship course. Bradley starts fuming and pulls out a blood-red stone and says that they could just burn alive for him now. He breaks the stone and a bunch of skulls start flying toward them. It mixes in with the other skulls to make a stronger spell and rushes towards her. Gray asks if Bella was alright. Bella says that her barrier could hold, but she was about to say something when Bradley cuts her off and says that her mana reserve won't last. He says that she's at most about a minute left. Bella asks Ariel to attack Bradley while she is defending. Ariel says that she understands. She looks through the barriers to see where the flames were thin and decides that she could project mana outside the barrier. She goes near the barrier and starts casting. She attacks through the barrier straight at Bradley, but her attack disappears before it could hit him. Bradley sees the attack and starts laughing, asking if that was her counterattack. Gray remembers that Professor Uriel's offensive magic was one of the weakest among the staff, and with the flames absorbing her spells there was no way to counterattack. Bella asks what they were going to do now. She says that she was almost out of mana. Ariel says that this was why she asked them to run away earlier. Gray steps forward and asks them to leave it to him. Bella asks what he was planning to do with a sword from this far away. Gray says that it was fine and that he was sure that he could do something. Ariel asks if he was sure that he could die if he used that mysterious power once again, and even if he lives his healing arm might never recover again. He says that dying alone was better than all three of them dying. Bradley sees a glow from within the dark flames. Before he could